This place is so amazing. There's so much culture here. There's so much art. I wake up in the morning and I go for a walk and there's danzantes at the park and you smell copal and you go get your coffee and they put cinnamon in it. And there's always music and there's always art and there's always struggle. There's always politica in everything that we do. And I'm so inspired by all of it and I love it so much. It's like we have to preserve it. We have to hold on to it.
My name is Yapsi Gomez. I am Yoeme Encora. I am indigenous from the Southwest region and I grew up in Logan Heights. My community is full of life and character and lots of artists and people very passionate about caring for our community. But it's also, there's a lot of presence of industry and there's the freeway and, you know, as beautiful as the community is, there's a lot of environmental problems that we face.
The Chollas Creek watershed is a 32 square mile natural waterway and drainage system in San Diego that traverses 8 different neighborhoods.
The Chollas Creek area, along with the adjacent neighborhoods, has seen several years of disinvestment, meaning there is lack of public spaces, there is lack of access to quality green spaces, which kind of impacts the air quality of the neighborhoods along the creek.
So some of the things that we hear is there's a lot of litter, there's a lot of trash. My neighborhood floods. We have limited resources to be able to address this.
The diesel particulate matter that impacts our health so heavily is also causing climate change. It also warms the planet. So 2 birds, 1 stone, you need to start here.
We need more parks and open spaces. We need places to gather that have access to shade.
I have stories of my uncles swimming in this water, but none recently.
We know that the areas that this watershed is located within have unique needs.
If we take ownership, if we are responsible, if we speak up, not just putting something in now for a temporary fix, but what's it going to do further down the road.
I'm Ben Preston, a policy researcher at the RAND Corporation. Chollas Creek has been one recent focus of San Diego's climate and parks planning. Our goal with this project is to partner with community organizers to capture on film the ways effective planning for environmental justice involves deep collaboration between local decision makers, nonprofits, and community groups.
We saw how Groundwork USA was using historical maps of their trust to make people more aware of the link between systemic discrimination and environmental injustice. We knew that other communities around the country would also benefit from a way to see those connections using data.
Hi, I'm Carlos Calvo. I'm an assistant policy researcher at RAND, and I'm part of the research team that created the tool to explore the enduring legacy of redlining in urban environments. These areas, neighborhoods, communities are extremely heterogeneous. They're very different from each other. But one thing the redline areas have in common is they're closer to environmental hazards. They're closer to pollutants. Their populations are more susceptible to climate effects, to disease, to cancer risk.
Users can select the city they're interested in and explore environmental metrics like health hazards, tree cover, and flood risk within redline districts. These effects are not coincidental or even accidental. They're the result of a long history of racist policies that date back to the 1930s, when the federal government's Homeowners Loan Corporation, or HOLC, began grading neighborhoods based on their perceived risk for home loan lending. The neighborhoods that were deemed the most risky tended to be those with predominantly Black and immigrant populations. This practice became known as redlining.
That map, that redlining map, yes, 100%. It overlays where the freeways are, where the industry is, where the asthma rates are, where unemployment is, where over-policing is. It's just that same map over and over and over, and we have to contend with that.
Data can help policymakers zero in on injustices in their communities like persistent poverty, racial and ethnic segregation, disproportionate environmental stressor burden, as well as the impacts from climate change.
Climate change affects the communities surrounding this watershed in very unique ways. The populations in this area have been identified as being particularly vulnerable to climate change conditions, especially with respect to extreme heat.
The fact that Logan Heights in itself only has one major park, or two major parks, but very few green spaces is like a very large concern, especially with rising temperatures, heat.
We've done heat studies and heat mapping studies that show that the extreme heat conditions on the ground can vary by up to 20 degrees depending on the development conditions. So when there's more paving and less green space and trees, those areas can be significantly hotter, and this affects populations that have less capacity to adapt to that change. This means that they may live in homes that lack air conditioning or insulation, and it makes it much harder to adapt to the extreme heat conditions.
It's really very fraught, and climate change increases all of those risks. So what used to be a 50-year storm is now a 25-year storm. And what used to be a 100-year storm, like cataclysmic, now can happen every 50. And the average intensity of storms that come through Southern California has peaked dramatically. So we have longer periods of drought with the water coming in more of a deluge, right? So big storms and then long periods of water insecurity.
A lot of the stakeholders that have been involved in the Chollas Creek planning effort have been involved for over 20 years.
Groundwork San Diego Chollas Creek was formed in 2007 in partnership with EPA, National Park Service, and Groundwork USA. And Groundwork San Diego Chollas Creek was formed specifically to serve as the watershed manager for the communities in the Chollas Creek watershed. The most important part of the work is to engender the trust of the communities, which have not really been heard from by city leaders for decades.
There has been a lot of obstacles engaging community. On one hand, the pandemic really slowed down that process, but also the lack of trust between the city and any official organizations and the people, any grassroots organization, because it's not like we've never done this before. It's not like we haven't tried before. So that's definitely a big part of it. And also trying to survive, people trying to maintain their jobs, trying to take care of their children. It's hard to find the time and the energy to participate in stuff like this.
We can say we know there wasn't trust before. We're going to speak to that because it's important, and we need you to understand that it's important to us.
If we've been historically divested, if we've been ignored, then this is where you start. You don't start elsewhere.
When you're in an underserved group already, and they're not getting funds to come to that group to make things happen differently, or to build around it, or to build for your children, then that's a part of, it takes energy out of you. It takes the ability to even speak up. And so if that gets wider, then what you have is fewer people coming to the table.
You need the community care about the space. You need them to be involved on some level. And you need to focus foundation and government money on maintaining these spaces. And luckily, the state of California has become much more aware and focused on funneling money to underserved communities. So habitats like this that are embedded in a community that has less or fewer resources to devote to it, the state really makes that a priority.
At the end of the day, we do not want to have any planning initiatives brought forward that don't bring real positive change to people that are actually living in the community in ways that they need and in ways that they want and would be most beneficial to them.
What we want to do is to help these residents understand they're vital, they're important. We need them. They are the experts in their own community.
Including residents throughout every step of the process, whether it's long-term planning, boundary defining, or grant making, can help make the community engagement process procedurally just and meaningful. Anticipating and addressing concerns about how potential developments might cause issues like green gentrification or displacement can help ensure the change pursued is change wanted by residents. Community education efforts, for instance, communicating the ways grant making and planning directly influence neighborhood conditions could go a long way.
The city has really changed its focus. It really wants to redress park deficiency. It really wants to increase equitable access to nature.
So in 2021, the mayor's Parks for All of Us initiative included a Parks Master Plan that was the first Parks Master Plan adopted in 50 years. And that included a long overdue formal designation and recognition of the Chollas Creek watershed as a regional park.
There's really a strong push to do effective climate action planning here. So we are able to bring in money to do big projects here, stream bed restorations, brush management to remove fire risk from the neighbors, So it is possible for us to fund projects in these spaces that keeps my team in these spaces, which means that we can do maintenance in these spaces, and that's the key to long-term success.
This master planning effort will be very community-driven, based on feedback from the residents that live not just within the community, but across the city, because this really is intended to be a regional resource that brings increased economic activity into the oftentimes and mostly disadvantaged communities surrounding the watershed, but also, as I had mentioned before, really focusing on other opportunities for pedestrian connections, as well as improved environmental conditions as well.
We're very excited to be working with several community partners. It's a great opportunity for the city to be able to collaborate with the Chollas Creek Foundation, with Canyonlands, and several other organizations that have been doing a lot of work.
Now that the city has reached out, if you will, we have a coalition of nonprofits and organizations and planning group members who are concerned about the Chollas Creek and all the elements to it. So we meet and we give our input, and the relationship is working pretty well.
We've been working on a community plan update for the last 20 years that would essentially guide future growth in Barrio Logan, removing industry from residences and creating that barrier where right now there isn't any. That plan was just passed in 2021.
This idea of collaborating across the watershed with planning groups and NGOs and resident groups and others who care about this EJ work and about climate justice, all coming together as opposed to competing against each other for limited funds and attention, is the thing that has really made the difference. So advice I would give is collaborate, collaborate, collaborate.
I would say that the only reason why this formal designation came to be was because of the tireless advocacy from the community groups located around the watershed. They truly understand the issues of the people that live and work in these communities, and they worked very hard to convey that to city leadership and really bring forward solutions so that we can continue to work together as we move forward.
So this work really demonstrates that better policy and better policy outcomes can really happen when all stakeholders involved in a policy decision come together and collaborate. And that includes government, nonprofit organizations, community organizers, individual residents, as well as the private sector.
I'm inspired by my children. I have this vision of my grandchildren playing in a green Logan. And getting to see those danzantes and getting the culture and breathing clean air. We deserve all of that. And I think that we're in this really great space in the movement where it's starting to come to fruition.
We're always looking for ways to make the way of life, the quality of life better. We ought to be able to live in an environment where we feel safe, where we can breathe, where we don't have to have all the issues that we have today. We can clean it up a little bit. And we know there's a lot of damage been done. However, we know that now it's time to start cleaning it up.